this one thing is the single most expensive thing that a crypto, or any investor for that matter, can have when they are investing in the markets, and that is emotions. Now, obviously, you might be like, oh, well, that makes no sense. We're going to break it down. Trust me, just stay with me. But I promise you, after this video, you will completely understand why I'm making this claim and how this can cost investors thousands, millions, even billions of dollars. And we will see that over $1 billion has been liquidated in the past 24 hours. And so this is a very, very expensive trait, and it does cut both ways. So I want to talk about a little bit about that today. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you are new here, please give me a like and a subscribe, all that type of stuff. It does help me get pushed further into the YouTube algorithm, particularly if you do find the information that I talk about useful. So anyway, let's go on ahead. We'll dive right in. We've got a lot to talk about today, and I don't want to waste any more time. If we do look here, we can see a little bit of a nice bounce on the market today. Now, obviously, if we go look at the week, things are going to look a little grim. Obviously, we do have some pretty good moves to the upside, kind of here and there, but overall, the market's looking a little rough. We could see, Ethereum down about 7%, Doge about 15%, Ondo about 15%, Solana really taking a little bit of a beating here, down at 13.3%. We can also see Bitcoin down about 7%. So some pretty big moves to the downside here. Obviously, we do have a couple kind of isolated moves to the upside, but it's very clear to see that the market kind of more down than up. And as I kind of alluded to here a little bit ago, we can see over $1 billion liquidated from the market within the past 24 hours. Now, in my opinion, this is really, really important because this speaks exactly to emotion. Now, this is emotion in a different way than what we're going to be seeing out of crypto prices, but it's emotion all the same. We're going to be talking about kind of two fundamental emotions today. The first one is going to be fear, and then the second one is going to be greed. These are the two primary motivators within the crypto market. So much so that we even do have a fear and greed index, and this is something that I would say is widely cited as a general sentiment on the market. Now, obviously, we can see when we're looking at something like 24-hour rect and on liquidations, we're all talking about greed here, particularly when we see this amount of longs or this amount of shorts being liquidated. Usually, some of these shorts, we have seen the market just kind of come down wholesale over the past probably 1 to 3 days, but even still kind of for the past 2 months or so, there's just kind of been an overall downtrend within the market. Now, the longs here, this is just people being crazy and being greedy. Obviously, the market, if we go and take a look at the Bitcoin chart, we can see over the past several days, a really, really strong move to the downside. And so to see that much liquidated in just a 24-hour time period, again, over $1 billion, a ton of money liquidated here. When we are seeing that kind of money liquidated, that's pure greed. That's people essentially taking shorts. They're going and essentially trying to continue to play the market to the downside. They're playing way too high of leverage. They've already kind of missed the trade. They're probably playing down here hoping for a continuation. And then of course it comes back around. We see a bounce and then all of them get liquidated. Now, this possibly could be fear because maybe they're kind of revenge trading. Maybe we were setting up for kind of a move to the upside here. Obviously, we see anything but. We see a move completely to the opposite side here on the downside. And then there's a little bit of revenge trading going on, hoping to maybe see some sort of short to continue, kind of the play to the downside because now the market's bearish. And then, of course, it flips around. Never a great position to be in. But that is, that's going to be the kind of the greed trading going on here. And then we have the other thing, which is fear. Now, if we look at Bitcoin, it's fairly clear to see how we could be looking at fear here, of course, because obviously, if we look at kind of the wider structure, even just on the hour, it's been a very, very strong sell-off over the past about day or day and a half. And if we go back to the daily chart, we can see why there's so much fear kind of propagating into this market right here. And that's because we have seen the Bitcoin chart kind of move around and bounce around between these two various areas. And this was kind of a very, very strong kind of level of support here. We could see, wick down here, wick here, a couple of different wicks over here, a wick here, another wick here. But here we've actually broken and kind of sustainably broken through this, which means this structure has kind of been invalidated. The support has been broken. Now, of course, we can always go back and reclaim it, but kind of where we're at right now, we obviously saw a wick down almost to this level of support here, kind of at this 85 range. maybe we continue back down to this level of support, bounce off it, or maybe we kind of run right back up into this little range trading zone that we have been in for the past probably 2 or 3 months at this point. So hard to know for sure, but that's essentially kind of what we're seeing here out of fear, right? I mean, this is broken, the play's invalidated, Bitcoin's going to 85, maybe even below that. We see 74, a whole bunch of different type of stuff here, which is really interesting because if you're looking at holding Bitcoin long term, this shouldn't really impact your calculus too much. And we're going to continue on with this kind of theory and this kind of thought process as we move along, because we're starting to see that institutions are taking that route, and it's probably going to be very productive and very successful for them. Fun like little quick stat for you. Nobody that has held Bitcoin longer than 4 years has ever lost money, ever. Pretty interesting stat. Now, obviously, past performances are not indicators of future gains, but that is a pretty interesting stat to know, because that's a pretty impressive stat that not many assets have. Of course, Bitcoin is a relatively young asset, but something that has a pretty strong track record ahead of it. So now what we're seeing here on the chart, obviously, is it's very hard to say exactly where we're going to be settling here. We are kind of in the middle, so I would not say a particularly great trade to get into. You can see I did have a trade open here. We are kind of just sitting down a little bit. I have been actually playing all these trades pretty low leverage, so we can kind of see some of these breakdowns happen, and it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. That's kind of how I built it. We could see here, virtual is actually the only trade that's up just barely, but it is up nonetheless. Obviously, over the past 24 hours, we have seen a pretty strong move to the downside. If you are interested in trading Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever you might want to be interested in trading, I do have that link in the description below to BTCC, a 10% bonus on first-time deposits in addition to the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user, as well as no VPN or KYC necessary. So if this is something that stands out to you, or you want to give trading a try, maybe you're trying to capitalize on some of the choppiness that we've seen. Again, this is a period of time where can be a little bit risky, but if you're looking to kind of maybe try and catch the dip and kind of play a bounce there or something like that, always an option. So anyway, I've got that in the description below if you are interested. Now, moving on, kind of playing on this fear and greed type of dynamic that we're running through, we need to kind of zoom out and take a look, because I think a lot of the people who would be feeling fearful at this point in time are looking at a chart that probably looks something similar to this roughly, right? Wow. It looks real bad, right? And I understand that. And, maybe we're even looking kind of like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, and we're kind of looking at a chart like this. We could see there was some kind of consolidation up here, and now we've broken down. These are all ways that the chart is probably, looking a little bad and making people a little fearful. That's fair. I'm not going to kind of dispute that. But here I'm going to give you a couple of counterpoints as to why the chart actually looks insanely good, and why really what we've seen over the past 2 days, 2 months, even 2 years really does not even matter at all. And the first thing here is we can see Bitcoin is only at 3% adoption in 2025, similar to the internet in 1990, social media in 2005, and the online banking in 1996, according to River's latest research. Still very, very early. Now, of course, if this is true, this is massively bullish, because again, imagine, look at what the internet did, and look at what it was like in 1990. Look at what social media is doing. Imagine what that was like in 2005. Look at what online banking is for the world currently. Imagine what that was in 1996. I mean, it was still very, very early. There was still a whole bunch of fear kind of within the ecosystem. Nobody had true conviction of how it could exactly look out or turn out in the future. Nobody really even knew kind of what it did, other than a very select few people that were actively kind of participating in that ecosystem, and they were the ones kind of building that along. And so obviously a very, very interesting kind of stat here, an interesting post. As you can see, it's kind of like that bell curve. You can see it kind of starts off a little bit slow, it really starts to take off, and then it kind of starts to flatten out as most of the adoption curve has kind of already been hit. Now, think about what's happening here and kind of map this on to a curve like this. Up until very, very recently, institutions, governments, even I would say the majority of the world's population either doesn't know, doesn't care, or has a somewhat neutral to negative view of crypto. Now we're starting to see the institutions kind of change their tune a little bit. They're flipping the script, governments as well. I think there's a very, very strong possibility that we see a mad dash between multiple different nations to acquire as much Bitcoin as humanly possible. If that does happen, I mean, obviously, these are the types of things that I'm talking about that we would probably be seeing at this point in time. I mean, a really, really massive run up the adoption curve. Again, in my opinion, obviously we don't ever know anything for sure, but this is something that is pretty cool, and I will repost it just so if you are interested. I do have all the links to my Twitter and everything in the description below. If you do want to go to my Twitter account, I do kind of essentially keep everything updated. I probably post 3 to 5 times a day about random various and cool things happening within the crypto space. So if you are interested, I do have those in the description below as well. Now, moving on, we can see something, obviously we're talking about the adoption path and kind of what that adoption curve looks like. And then now we've got this second piece, which is something that we've never really seen before, right? Regulators, bullish. Institutions, bullish. Asset managers, bullish. Crypto Twitter, bearish. Retail, bearish. This has kind of never happened before. Usually it's the exact opposite. You have crypto, Twitter, and retail and all these other people who are relentlessly bullish, and then all these institutions that have been super bearish, calling it a scam asset used for terrorism, all of this other type of fun stuff that we've heard in the past regarding Bitcoin and crypto generally. And so now what we're seeing is, that's kind of flipping right now. There's a lot of people in crypto. There's a lot of people on, X or Twitter or whatever, that are kind of showing a lot of that kind of overall sentiment. You can see that, people think that we've topped and it's not going to go past 100K and we're going, this was the cycle top and we're now going into a bear market. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that is entirely possible. But what we are seeing while all of this stuff is happening is we're seeing institutions buy like absolute madmen, getting all of the Bitcoin, all of the Ethereum, all of the everything that they can get a hold of. We can see here back in this post, SEC acknowledging the grayscale filing to allow staking for its spot Ethereum ETF. So again, this is just not like a hodl portfolio like we're seeing out of Bitcoin. This actually gives like some sort of like passive income opportunity to to traditional investors. Traditional investors like passive yields, something that where they're just purely speculating on. Generally, it can do well, but it has various it can be wildly different in how it's valued. And so, seeing some like staking and kind of adding that into the ETF, I think would be really, really cool to see. And that's why I think a lot of the regulators, institutions, asset managers, a lot of this, like they can see where the puck is going, or at least they now finally can. I think they were, maybe a little bit behind some of us, but they can finally kind of see that. They're starting to get some kind of turned on to that. And in my opinion, I do think that there is a lot of kind of coordinated FUD manipulation, all of this type of stuff happening in the market so these institutions can get better entries. Because ultimately, if these institutions are trying to acquire as much as possible, they're not going to be bull posting it while they're kind of buying more, right? They're going to be trying to manipulate the market down as much as humanly possible and then looking to kind of make the move to the upside and have retail buy all of their bags once the kind of the move has started. And so if you can see here, that's exactly what we're talking about when we go back to kind of this, greed and fear dynamic. Yes, if you look at this chart, this maybe looks a little bit fearful. But if you look at this chart looks pretty nice overall, right? I mean, we could see obviously a really nice run here, came back a little bit, didn't really do a whole lot. Saw another kind of double top here, came back, didn't really do a whole lot. And now we've seen a really strong and sustained move to the upside for the past couple of years at this point. And so again, when the music stops, when all this type of stuff, who knows for sure, we could have seen a potential double top going on here. That is entirely possible. Maybe we do come back into a bull or a bear market, and maybe we see us dropping down to 62, 63, maybe even down to into the 50s, maybe even down into the high 30s. It's really hard to say for sure, but ultimately, again, coming back to the fear and greed, like if you do really fundamentally believe in Bitcoin or crypto as an asset class, this shouldn't bother you, because in the long term, if you do feel like the future of money and the future of finance is in crypto, you're just buying more at a cheaper price, right? That to me, I would be totally happy if that happened. Obviously everybody wants to make as much money as humanly possible today, but that's just generally not how investing works. If you're investing in anything that is at least worth investing in my opinion, the longer you hold something, the more valuable it becomes if you are in a real asset that it kind of is built to last, right? And so overall, that's kind of how I'm looking at the space overall. Even though we are seeing a little bit of kind of fear and doubt and uncertainty and all this type of stuff going on within the crypto market, I do think it's fairly clear to see like where the market is going. I mean, obviously institutions are still just as bullish as they have been. We're still seeing legislation come through. Even though we've seen price dip a little bit, it's not like all legislation is off the table. It's not like people are delisting their ETFs. Like all of this stuff is still happening. It's still continuing to move along. If anything, we're seeing a whole bunch of more institutions get involved as we're starting to see some of this price come down. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. I just think it's very important to kind of consider kind of how this kind of fits within the larger picture. A lot of people, as I mentioned, I think are kind of really too zoomed in to see the forest from the trees. And that is how so many investors lose, is because they start to lose the forest from the trees and they just can't get out of it. And that causes them some very, very big issues, and usually issues that lead to losses. And maybe, worse than that, they just overall disillusionment from the crypto market. And then maybe they leave and, there's no way to kind of for them to recapture their losses because they're too busy being upset for, how they ended up losing. So anyway, like I said, hopefully the information here was valuable. If it was, please do give me a like and a subscribe because it does really, really help me out, particularly getting pushed further onto the YouTube algorithm so more people can see videos like this, because I do think in times like this particularly, it's very important for people to kind of understand and see the bigger picture and make sure that they're not getting carried away or doing anything too crazy. The other thing I would also say is if you are truly feeling like genuinely distressed by what we've seen over the past 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you probably should reassess kind of your allocated positions into crypto as well. I personally do not ever invest money I cannot afford to lose into crypto, just because it still is. It's very new. It's highly speculative. Even though I believe in the long-term future of crypto, it's hard to say, which one will be the winner. While we are probably seeing the Amazons and the Googles and the Apples and all these types of things being created, there's also going to be, the Enrons and the Pets.coms and, all of these others, the AOLs that looked good back then, but they just couldn't stand the test of time. And it's almost impossible to know for sure, which ones those are going to be. And so something to think about as well. Also, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, whatever, just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be another great way to do it. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.